Protein structure. This reading is on page 42 of your workbook. Organic compounds are substances made of carbon, hydrogen, and usually oxygen. They often contain nitrogen, phosphorus, and sulfur, and sometimes traces of metals such as iron and magnesium. Organic compounds make up the structures of cells, tissues, and organs of living things. Many of them regulate and coordinate the life activities of organisms as well. Still others are the fuel that cells break down to obtain energy. There are four kinds of organic molecules found in living things: proteins, carbohydrates, lipids, aka fats, and nucleic acids, DNA and RNA. All are vital, but none are more essential and varied in their functions than proteins. Proteins regulate all chemical activities of life and are also the key structural components of cells. Without proteins, there is no life. A protein is a gigantic molecule that is really just a chain of many small molecules, called amino acids, linked together. There are 20 amino acids, each different from the others in some way, but all of which have some basic features in common. What makes each of the thousands of proteins needed by an organism unique is the specific sequence and number of amino acids in its chain. The long chain of amino acids in a protein does not just dangle in space. It folds into a specific three-dimensional shape determined by its sequence of amino acids. This shape, in turn, determines what the proteins can do. In other words, the job a protein does in an organism depends upon its shape. This is why it is so important to understand protein structure. Structure determines shape, and shape determines function. Building a protein requires bonding amino acids together into a long chain. Each amino acid has two identical functional groups. At one end is the amino group that contains a nitrogen and two hydrogens, and at the other end is the carboxylic group, which contains a carbon with either a hydroxide and a double bonded oxygen. The amino group of one amino acid bonds to the acid group of another. In the process, the first loses an OH from its acid group, and the second loses an H from its amino group. The result is a molecule of water in the beginnings of an amino acid chain. Two amino acids bonded together. More amino acids can now be attached at either end. As the chain grows longer, it is called a polypeptide. Only when all amino acids needed for that particular protein are attached is it called a protein. The specific order of amino acids in a protein is referred to as its primary structure. See the diagram below. As the chain grows, it bends and folds in a very precise pattern that depends upon the positioning of the amino acids in the chain. Folding is affected by factors such as A, weak attractive forces between parts of some amino acids and others, and B, the fact that some amino acids are hydrophobic, repelled by water, they're afraid of water, and seek the inside of the three-dimensional blob. Most important for you to understand is that primary structure determines the protein's shape, and shape, much like the shape of a key, determines what it can do. Changing a protein's shape, like changing the shape of a key, may mean it no longer functions the way it is supposed to. Since it is a sequence of amino acids that determine shape, anything that changes the sequence of amino acids in a protein may change its shape and, in turn, its ability to do its job. So if you take a look at the picture here, the primary structure of proteins has to do with the order of amino acids. And you can see that these amino acids link together and it almost looks like a chain or maybe like a necklace. When they're linked together like this, due to the interactions between the different amino acids, remember I said if they're hydrophobic, or depending on how the molecules are connected, the protein will twist and like be shaped in different ways. And once the protein is fully completed, it is shaped and wrapped in such a way that it's useful to do whatever its function is. And so that's what's showing here: primary, secondary, and tertiary structures. So here are the reading comprehension questions. I'm going to read through the questions. You can pause when you need to so you can answer them in your workbook. And as you can see here, this is on page 43. Number 1, what are organic compounds made of? Number 2, what other elements might be found in organic compounds? Number 3, why are organic compounds important? Number 4, what are the 4 kinds of organic molecules found in living things? Number 5, why are proteins important? Number 6, what are proteins made of? How many of these small molecules are there? Number 7, what makes proteins unique? Number 8, why is it important to understand protein structure? Number 9, what are the functional groups of each amino acid? Number 10, how do the different amino acids bond to one another?